For many Sikhs, the idea of an independent state called Khalistan represented a dream of freedom and self-determination. In this video, we'll explore the origins of this movement and what it meant for the people of Punjab. The Khalistan movement was a separatist movement that emerged in the Indian state of Punjab in the 1970s. The movement was led by Sikh militants who sought to create an independent state called Khalistan, which would be exclusively for Sikhs. The movement gained momentum in the 1980s, leading to violence and unrest in the region. The Khalistan movement had a profound impact on India and the Sikh community worldwide, sparking a broader discussion about cultural and religious diversity and tolerance. The Khalistan movement emerged during a period of political unrest in India in the 1970s. The movement was led by Sikh militants who believed that the Indian government was discriminating against Sikhs and that they deserved their own independent state. The movement gained momentum in the 1980s, as militants clashed with government forces and violence erupted in Punjab. The Indian government responded to the Khalistan movement with a heavy hand, declaring a state of emergency and launching a military operation to quell the separatist movement. The operation, called Operation Blue Star, was carried out in 1984 and resulted in the deaths of thousands of people, including civilians and militants. The violence and unrest continued in the region, leading to a period of instability and uncertainty. The Indian government cracked down on the Khalistan movement, and there were reports of human rights violations and extrajudicial killings. The Khalistan movement also had an impact on the Sikh community worldwide, as Sikhs outside of India rallied to support the movement. There were protests and demonstrations in countries such as Canada, the UK, and the US, as Sikhs called for justice for their community in India. Today, the Khalistan movement is no longer a significant force in India, and the demand for an independent Sikh state has largely dissipated. However, the movement has left a lasting legacy, and its impact on India and the Sikh community worldwide continues to be felt today. The primary goal of the Khalistan movement was to create an independent state called Khalistan, which would be exclusively for Sikhs. The movement emerged as a response to what many Sikhs saw as discrimination and marginalization by the Indian government. Specifically, the Khalistan movement aimed to achieve the following goals. Independence. The primary goal of the Khalistan movement was to achieve independence for Punjab and create an independent Sikh state called Khalistan. Self-determination. The movement sought to provide self-determination for Sikhs in the region, who felt that their rights and freedoms were being violated by the Indian government. Religious freedom. Sikhs felt that their religious freedom was being threatened by the Indian government and that they were being discriminated against on the basis of their religion. The Khalistan movement sought to create a state where Sikhs could practice their religion freely and without interference. Economic development. The movement aimed to create economic development and prosperity in Punjab by creating a separate state that would focus on the needs of Sikhs. Political representation. Sikhs felt that they were not adequately represented in the Indian government and that their needs and concerns were not being addressed. The Khalistan movement sought to create a separate state where Sikhs could have greater political representation and a greater voice in decision-making. Overall, the Khalistan movement sought to create a separate state where Sikhs could have greater autonomy and self-determination. The movement emerged as a response to what many Sikhs saw as discrimination and marginalization by the Indian government and aimed to provide greater political, economic, and religious freedom for Sikhs in the region. The Khalistan movement had a direct impact on the death of India's Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi. In 1984, Indira Gandhi ordered the Indian Army to storm the Golden Temple, the holiest Sikh shrine, in an effort to remove Sikh separatists who had taken refuge there. The operation, known as Operation Blue Star, resulted in the deaths of hundreds of militants and civilians, as well as significant damage to the temple complex. The storming of the Golden Temple led to widespread anger and protests among Sikhs in India and around the world. On October 31, 1984, just a few months after the operation, Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards in retaliation for the storming of the Golden Temple. Gandhi's assassination led to a wave of anti-Sikh violence in Delhi and other parts of India, with thousands of Sikhs being killed in targeted attacks by mobs. The violence was seen as a response to the assassination of Gandhi and the perception that Sikhs were responsible for her death. The assassination of Indira Gandhi and the subsequent violence against Sikhs led to a breakdown in relations between the Indian government and the Sikh community. It also underscored the need for greater understanding and dialogue between different religious and cultural groups in India. The Khalistan movement had a significant impact on India and the Sikh community worldwide. Political instability. The Khalistan movement caused significant political instability in India, particularly in the state of Punjab. The movement led to violent clashes between militants and government forces and sparked a broader discussion about cultural and religious diversity and tolerance. Human rights violations. The Khalistan movement was marked by reports of human rights violations and extrajudicial killings. The Indian government cracked down on the movement, leading to reports of police brutality and torture. Economic disruption. The Khalistan movement caused significant economic disruption in Punjab, with businesses and industries being affected by the violence and unrest. The instability caused by the movement led to a decline in economic growth and investment in the region. International attention. The Khalistan movement drew international attention to the issue of religious and cultural diversity in India. Sikhs in other countries rallied to support the movement, leading to protests and demonstrations in countries such as Canada, the UK, and the US. Legacy. The Khalistan movement left a lasting legacy in India and the Sikh community worldwide. The movement sparked a broader discussion about the rights and freedoms of minority groups in India and highlighted the need for greater cultural and religious tolerance. Changed political landscape. The Khalistan movement led to changes in the political landscape of Punjab and India. The Indian government implemented policies aimed at addressing the grievances of Sikhs, and political parties in Punjab began to focus more on the needs of the Sikh community. Reduced trust in Indian government. The Khalistan movement eroded trust in the Indian government among Sikhs and other minority groups. The violence and unrest caused by the movement led to a sense of disillusionment with the government and a belief that the needs of Sikhs were not being adequately addressed. The Khalistan movement still exists today, although it is much less active and visible than it was in the 1980s and 1990s. In India, the movement has largely been suppressed by the government's crackdown on separatist groups and the implementation of policies aimed at addressing the grievances of Sikhs. In other parts of the world, the Khalistan movement continues to have a small but vocal following among the Sikh diaspora. In countries such as Canada, the UK, and the US, there are still some individuals and organizations advocating for a separate Sikh state. However, the movement has not gained widespread support and is generally viewed as a fringe movement. In recent years, the focus of the Sikh community has shifted towards issues such as human rights, political representation, and economic development, rather than the pursuit of a separate state. Sikh activists continue to advocate for greater recognition and protection of Sikh culture and identity, both in India and around the world. Overall, while the Khalistan movement still exists, its influence and impact have declined significantly since the 1980s and 1990s. The focus of the Sikh community has shifted towards more constructive and peaceful means of addressing their grievances, rather than pursuing separatism or violence. According to reports, Avtar Singh Kanda, who is believed to have orchestrated the violent incident at the Indian High Commission in London on March 19, leads a dual life in the United Kingdom, UK. There is evidence to suggest that Avtar Singh Kanda alias Azad, who is seeking political asylum in the UK, is actually Ranj Singh, the self-proclaimed leader of the designated terrorist group Khalistan Liberation Force, KLF. It is worth noting that Kanda's father, Kulwant Singh Kukrana, was also a KLF terrorist who was killed by security forces in 1991. Reports from both London and New Delhi indicate that it is likely that Kanda, using the alias Ranj Singh, is responsible for issuing KLF press statements that accuse the Indian government of committing acts of violence against the Sikh community worldwide. Kanda, who was at the forefront of the March 19 protests in London and is mentioned in the first information report, FIR, filed by the Delhi police regarding the incident. It is also reported that the UK security establishment and police did not take any action at the time. Intelligence sources also indicate that Kanda, who uses the names Avtar Singh Azad and Ranj Singh on his Facebook profile, is planning to claim responsibility for future terrorist attacks in India, particularly targeting Punjab. His objective is to radicalize young people in Punjab, as well as in countries such as the UK, Canada, the US, Germany, and Australia, and incite support for the so-called Khalistan movement against India. On 15 April, the Auckland police have arrested Baltej Singh, a pro-Khalistan activist in New Zealand and the nephew of Satwant Singh, the assassin of former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, in connection with the recovery of 328 kilograms of methamphetamine worth close to 100 crore Indian rupees in the international market. Baltej Singh is known for organising anti-India and pro-Khalistan protests and gatherings in New Zealand, and he is also listed as a significant contributor to fundraising efforts for the Khalistan movement. The idea of an independent Sikh homeland, known as Khalistan, does not have much popular support in Punjab currently. Instead, it appears to be gaining more momentum among Sikhs living in other countries like the UK, Canada, Australia, and the US. Unless there is a shift in the situation within Punjab, the likelihood of the Khalistan movement gaining traction there seems unlikely. However, if either the state or the central government mishandles the situation, there is a risk that the movement could escalate and become more significant in Punjab. Pakistan has taken advantage of the sentiments surrounding the Khalistan movement, and has played a significant role in providing support and funding to the movement in the past. This has been noted in a report by the Hudson Institute in Washington, which was released in September 2021. The report, authored by Aparna Pandey, Hussain Haqqani, and C. Christine Fair, raises concerns about the lack of investigation into the activities of Khalistan groups by the U.S. government, even though these groups have not been accused of a crime in the United States. The report also highlights Pakistan's involvement in providing funding to Khalistan groups outside of India. In conclusion, the concept of Khalistan and the movement for an independent Sikh homeland has a complex and contentious history. While it may have gained traction among Sikhs living abroad, particularly in the UK, Canada, Australia, and the US, the movement does not currently have widespread support in Punjab. However, the potential for the movement to escalate cannot be ignored, particularly if mishandled by the government. It is also important to acknowledge the role of external actors, such as Pakistan, in funding and supporting Khalistan groups. Overall, it is crucial to continue to examine and understand the factors that contribute to the Khalistan movement and work towards peaceful solutions that address the grievances of all parties involved. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.